Imagine you are a parent living in a small rural town. Your child has been struggling in school, trouble focusing, impulsive behavior, maybe falling behind in reading. After months of waiting, you finally get an appointment with a specialist 3 hours away. You drive there, sit in the waiting room, and finally see the doctor for 15 minutes. The doctor asks, "So, how has his behavior been over the last month?" And your mind goes blank. You remember the bad Tuesday last week, but was the whole month like that? You try to sum up 30 days of complex life in a 2-minute answer. The doctor prescribes a medication or changes a dose based on that summary and sends you home for another 3 months. This scenario is the reality for millions of families managing attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. It's a system built on snapshots, but ADHD is a movie. It plays out every single day. Now, imagine if that doctor didn't have to ask you to remember. Imagine if they already knew, week by week, exactly how your child was doing, not just from you, but from their teacher too. That is the promise of the study we are discussing today. It's called the RAMP study, and it might just redefine how we care for kids in rural America. To understand why this trial is so important, we have to back up and look at how ADHD is currently treated. It's not like a broken arm where you put on a cast and wait 6 weeks. ADHD management is an art form. It requires fine-tuning. The American Academy of Pediatrics has very clear guidelines. They say that to treat ADHD effectively, doctors need continuous feedback. They need to know, is the medication working? Are there side effects? Is the child focusing better in math class? Is he sleeping okay at home? In a perfect world, this feedback loop is tight. But in the real world, especially in rural areas, that loop is often broken. Here is the challenge. There is a massive shortage of pediatric mental health specialists. In many states, specifically the ones known as IDEA states, which are often more rural and historically have received less research funding, families might live hundreds of miles from a clinic. So, what happens? The feedback loop stretches out. Instead of checking in every few weeks, it might be every few months. And in that silence between appointments, things can go wrong. The medication might stop working, a child might struggle academically, and the doctor has no idea until the next visit.
But here's the part most people don't realize. The problem isn't just distance, it's data. Even if you lived next door to the clinic, human memory is flawed. If a doctor asks a parent, "How often was your child distracted this month?" the parent is likely to be influenced by what happened yesterday. It's called recency bias. We remember the extremes, the terrible tantrum or the perfect day, and we forget the average. This is where this clinical trial comes in. Researchers are asking, can we use simple, everyday technology to fix this broken feedback loop? Can we replace the snapshot of a clinic visit with a continuous stream of data? This brings us to the core of the trial. The study involves a tool called the Remote ADHD Monitoring Program, or RAMP for short. Now, when you hear remote monitoring, you might think of fancy wearable devices or complex brain scanners, but this study is remarkably grounded. It leverages something almost everyone has in their pocket, a cell phone. The researchers are studying whether a text message-based system can successfully gather data from the two most important observers in a child's life, their parents and their teachers. The mechanism they are using is a digital version of a very famous tool called the Vanderbilt Assessment Scale. If you have a child with ADHD, you have probably seen this. It's a paper form with a long list of behaviors, like fidgets with hands or has difficulty sustaining attention. You rate them from never to very often. Usually this form is a hassle. It's a piece of paper you have to remember to bring to the appointment. Teachers have to fill it out and mail it or send it home in a backpack where it gets crumpled under a lunchbox. The RAMP system changes this delivery method. Instead of a paper form every few months, the system sends a text message. It contains a secure link. The parent clicks it, fills out a quick update on their phone, and hits submit. The system can also send a link to the teacher. And here is where it gets interesting. All that data doesn't just go into a void, it feeds into a provider dashboard. This means the doctor can log in and see a graph. They can see, oh look, week 3 was really hard for Johnny, but week 4 got better. They can spot trends before the family even drives to the clinic. Basically, the researchers are studying if they can turn a sporadic, paper-based process into a continuous digital conversation.
But they aren't just testing if the technology works, they are testing if people will use it. Will rural parents find it helpful or annoying? Will overworked teachers actually click the link? This is a critical distinction. This trial isn't just about software, it's about human behavior. So how exactly are they testing this? Let's break down the trial design. This is a pilot study. In the world of clinical science, a pilot study is like a dress rehearsal. You don't spend millions of dollars recruiting thousands of people until you know the basic protocol is feasible. The researchers are looking to enroll 36 pairs. A pair consists of a caregiver and their child. The children need to be in the early stages of ADHD treatment. This is crucial because the early stage, the first few months of diagnosis or medication, is when the most adjustment is needed. It's when the feedback loop is most critical. The study is taking place across multiple sites in the ISPCTN network. That stands for the IDEA States Pediatric Clinical Trials Network. It's a network specifically designed to bring clinical trials to states that usually get left out of big medical research, places like Arkansas, Oklahoma, or Nebraska, for example. Once the families are enrolled, they are randomized. This means a computer flips a coin. Half of the families go into the control group. These families receive what is essentially standard care, but with a bonus. They get digital education handouts about pediatric health sent to them. They continue to see their doctor as usual, and they fill out ADHD forms on paper, just like they normally would. The other half goes into the intervention group. These are the families who get the RAMP system. For the RAMP group, the schedule is quite intensive at first. For the first 4 weeks, parents receive a text message every single week, asking them to complete the assessment. After that first month, it switches to monthly for 2 more months. But here's the part that makes this trial unique: the teacher component. We all know that kids often behave differently at school than at home. A child might be an angel for their parents, but unable to sit still in a classroom. So capturing the teacher's perspective is vital. In the intervention group, the researchers ask the parents for permission to contact the child's teacher. If the teacher agrees, they also get text messages with links to fill out the assessment. Think about the logistics here.
Teachers are incredibly busy. One of the big questions the study is asking is this too much to ask? The researchers are measuring feasibility. They are counting how many parents actually click the link, how many teachers complete the forms, do the doctors actually look at the dashboard, does the technology glitch? They aren't necessarily looking for a cure for ADHD here. They're looking for a proof of concept. They want to know if this method of care is sustainable in a real-world rural setting. One detail that stands out is the duration. The study lasts for about 10 months total, but the active intervention, the text messages, is concentrated in that first 3-month window. This aligns perfectly with the reality of ADHD treatment. Usually, once you find the right medication and the right dose, things stabilize. It's those first 90 days that are the roller coaster. Now, you might be wondering, why should I care about a small study with only 36 families? This is where things take an interesting turn. If this pilot is successful, it opens the door for a much larger trial. And if that trial is successful, it could fundamentally change the standard of care for rural pediatrics. Think about the implications. If we can prove that remote monitoring works, we can decouple care from location. A specialist in a major city could effectively manage the medication of a child living 5 hours away, relying on trusted, real-time data from the RAMP system, rather than forcing the family to drive in every month. It shifts medicine from being reactive to proactive. Right now, a doctor usually only hears about a problem if the parent calls in crisis or brings it up at the next visit. With a dashboard, a doctor could theoretically see a trend, say a child's focus score is dropping for 2 weeks straight, and call the parent to say, "Hey, I notice things are slipping. Should we adjust the dose?" That is a massive shift. It turns the doctor from a periodic visitor into a continuous partner. Furthermore, this trial tackles the issue of health equity. We know that children in rural areas often have worse health outcomes than children in cities. They have less access to specialists. They face more barriers to travel. By validating a low-tech, text message-based solution, these researchers are trying to level the playing field. They are saying you don't need to live next to a university hospital to get world-class data-driven ADHD care.
But there is also a risk. What if the data shows that parents find the weekly texts annoying? What if teachers simply ignore them? That would be a valuable finding too. It would tell researchers, okay, this approach is too burdensome. We need to find a different way. That is the beauty of science. A negative result, finding out that something doesn't work, is just as important as a positive one because it saves us from investing in a broken system.
Whenever we talk about children and data, we have to talk about safety and ethics. This trial has several layers of protection. First, there is the issue of privacy. The data being transmitted, how a child is behaving, their medical details, is sensitive. The RAMP system has to be secure, encrypted, and compliant with privacy laws like HIPAA. The study is overseen by an Institutional Review Board, or IRB, whose entire job is to ensure the risks to participants are minimized. Then there is the concept of informed consent. The parents have to agree to be in the study. But interestingly, the teachers also have to agree to participate. You can't just force a teacher to fill out data on a student. The researchers have to navigate the relationship between the parent, the school, and the doctor delicately. Also, consider the control group. Is it ethical to give one group the fancy new monitoring tool and the other group just paper forms? In clinical research, the answer is yes, provided that the control group is getting the current standard of care. The families in the control group aren't being denied treatment. They're getting the same care they would get if the study didn't exist. The intervention group is getting something extra that is experimental. We don't know yet if the extra thing is actually better. That's why we do the study. It's possible the text messages cause anxiety or confusion. Until the data is in, we can't assume the new way is the better way. So, to wrap this up, the RAMP trial is a fascinating look at the future of rural medicine. It's taking a condition that affects millions of kids, ADHD, and trying to solve the logistical nightmare of managing it from a distance. It's testing whether we can replace the memory of a stressed-out parent with the reliability of a digital chart. It's testing whether text messages can build a bridge between a classroom in a small town and a specialist in a big city. This is early-stage research. We won't know the results for a while. But the questions it asks about access, about technology, and about how we listen to patients are relevant to all of us. As always, this video is for educational purposes only. I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. If you have concerns about ADHD or your child's health, please speak with a qualified medical professional. Thank you for listening, and stay curious.